Here I have a big, beautiful box of Colorado peaches. They might not look beautiful to the average customer because many of them are overripe, a lot of them have bruising, and they don't look like the typical peaches that you get at the supermarket. But that's okay, because what I'm going to do next with these peaches doesn't require that they look good, only that they taste good. Join me today as I show you 3 methods of preserving peaches that you might not be aware of. Hi, I'm Gardener Scott, and this is 14 pounds of peaches. I got them at a farm stand that is near me. They are at the peak of ripeness. In a couple cases, maybe a little overripe. And I got these peaches for almost 75% less than they would have cost if I had hand-picked the beautiful, pretty, nice-looking peaches. But these are perfect for what I plan to do with them. And I do this every year. Save a bunch of money by using the peaches that not everybody else wants. The first thing I do is wash the peaches well. And now I'm going to take the pit out. And you can see this often happens when the peach is a little overripe. The pit itself will separate. That's okay. I'll take this half, cut off anything that is really unsightly or questionable, trim out any of the seed that may have been left behind. But if you look at the flesh, there's nothing wrong with this peach. It's beautiful. Now all I'm going to do is just cut this peach into chunks. And I'll do this with most of the peaches, probably about 10 pounds worth. And it doesn't matter the size of the chunk, doesn't matter how many pieces you end up with. I'm just cutting these into smaller pieces for greater surface area because I'm going to juice these peaches. The peach chunks will go in the top of this. This is a steam juicer. And this is my preferred method of preserving the peaches every year because I make a lot of peach jelly. And I love making peach habanero jelly. And this year I'm growing super hot peppers with the intent of making peach jelly, maybe with a devil's brain super hot pepper. To do all that jelly, I need a lot of juice, and this is the best way I know to juice peaches. In the bottom of the steam juicer is water, and as this heats and turns to steam, the steam rises through this center portion to the top, and it's in this top part where the peaches will be, and that steam will break apart the cells within the peaches. The juice will be released and the juice will flow back down into the middle section. And then we have this tube that we use to get the juice out. And so now I'm just cutting my peaches to throw into that top portion. And that's why the size really doesn't matter. I'm just trying to get little pieces to release as much of the juice from these peaches as I can. Now I'm going to leave the skin on these peaches. My juices will end up being a nice peachy color because of the skin. You can have a lighter yellow color juice if you take the skin off first. It's the red and the orange of this skin that will really affect the color of the juice. Because I'm okay with a peach-colored peach jelly, I'm going to leave the skins on. As gnarly as some of those peaches looked on the outside, on the inside, they look really good. And only a small amount actually needed to be trimmed off. All of the bruised pieces that you cut out because they might be just a little bit too far gone, can be put in the compost pile. But all the rest, I'll go ahead and put in the top portion of my steam juicer. In the sides of this top piece are holes that the juice will drain out of. So I fill this top portion with peaches up to the ring where those holes start, and I'll put the lid on. And so now I'll just let the steam juicer do its job. The heat is on, the water has begun to simmer, and once the steam starts rising, I'm going to give it about 60 minutes for the juice to be released from those peaches into this middle section. So I turned off the heat. Now I'm just going to lift the lid. This is steaming hot, so be careful. There will be some condensation on the lid, and we can just pour that right back into the pot. The level of the peaches has dropped as they've processed. You can get an idea of how much juice you have because you can see in the tube the level that the juice has risen to. And collecting the juice is quite simple. I'll just take my tube, and I have a container to collect it, and I'll let the fluid of this wonderful juice flow out into this container. This peach juice is ready to make into jelly. Now, if I were making jelly right away, I could go right to it because this juice is hot. I need to heat it up to make jelly, so I would just transfer it to another pot. But I'm not making jelly until my hot peppers are ready. So I'm going to use another method of preserving to keep this juice nice and fresh for me until I get to jelly making time. My recipe calls for 3 cups of peach juice. So I've measured 3 cups, and I'm just going to pour it into this jar. And then I'm going to put this jar into the freezer. So I'm going to freeze my peach juice to use in jelly making later on. If you're not a jelly maker, you could do a lot with this peach juice. You could freeze it and make a nice peach slush. Last year I made fresh peach ice cream using some of the peaches and some of the juice along with the cream. Absolutely delicious. You could also use it as a breakfast drink. Mix it with a little bit of sugar if you want, maybe a little bit of lemon juice, and it makes a fantastic drink. It's so easy to save the juice of the peaches that you can let your imagination run wild. You might be wondering what I'm going to do with all the leftover peaches after I got the juice out. Well, that's the second thing I like to do to preserve my peaches. I took the leftover peaches and just poured them into a bowl. Now, there were a couple white peaches that were mixed in with the yellow peaches, so that's why you might be noticing a difference in color, but that's not going to be an issue for this next procedure. Because I'm going to take these peach chunks and put them into my food processor to make a peach puree. And I'm going to use that puree in my dehydrator to make a fruit leather, which is delicious, and my granddaughters absolutely love it. Depending on your personal preferences, you can just use the peaches by themselves to make the fruit leather. Adding a little bit of lemon juice can add a little bit of a zing. You might want to add a little bit of cinnamon for the flavor, but I like to just use the peaches and just let that peach flavor shine. So with the peaches in the food processor, let's make a puree. It doesn't need to be completely smooth. In fact, a little chunky is okay. Now I'm going to take this pureed peach and pour it onto one of the trays for my dehydrator. Use a non-stick sheet with your dehydrator. Even with the non-stick surface, I still sprayed some vegetable oil spray. That'll help keep it from sticking later on as it dries. Even though we got most of the liquid out through the steam juicing, it's still pretty juicy. And we need all this leftover juice to disappear as part of the dehydrating process. I'm just going to spread this out into the rough shape of a square. I want it to be about 1/4 inch thick, maybe a little bit thicker. It's going to lose a lot of the volume once all of the liquid is dried over the course of the rest of this afternoon and evening. So with it spread out, trying to get as even as possible so that it dries as evenly as possible. A little thicker around the edges are okay, a little thinner in the middle is okay. And now this is ready to go into the dehydrator. So I filled 3 trays with the peach pulp. And now it's time to start the dehydrator. I'm just going to let it run, and I'll be back in about 3 to 4 hours. At about the 3-hour point, the edges will already be drying, but the underside may still be pretty moist, depending on how thick you poured it. So I usually begin just peeling off the edges to allow some of the air to get underneath. After it's more fully dry, I turn it upside down and then carefully peel off the non-stick sheet, and then I'll put it back in, and this will allow the bottom, which is now on the top, to dry more evenly as well. After about 5 to 8 hours, depending on the thickness of your peaches, this is what you're going to have. A sheet of dry but pliable peach leather. I like my leather in smaller pieces. You can try cutting this with a knife, but I find it is much easier to use a clean pair of kitchen shears and cut it to whatever size you want. Cut into strips, you can roll up the strips, and this makes a really nice addition to a kid's lunchbox. Or what I like to do is take the strips and cut them into bite-sized pieces. And then when I want a snack, all I take is a bite, and it's delicious in the moment. So after making the juice and the fruit leather, I still have some beautiful, though slightly blemished, peaches left behind. So the next thing I'm going to do, number 3 on the list, is freeze-dried peaches. Now, the nice thing about freeze drying is it allows for very long storage. In the freezer, I can expect that juice to be good for a few months before I use it. The roll-ups or the fruit leather can be expected to last for a number of weeks on the shelf, longer if it's stored in the refrigerator. But when you freeze dry peaches, they can be stored at room temperature in the pantry for months, even years if they've been sealed properly. So what I'm doing now is taking these peaches, I am removing the skin, and I'm cutting them into slices to put into my freeze dryer. While removing the skin, it was a good opportunity to cut out any excessive bruising or damaged areas. And like before, there were some white peaches thrown in to this mix, but that's not a problem. For now, let's get this last tray in the freeze dryer and get the processing started. The freeze dryer was pre-cooling, and I closed the drain valve, so now it's ready to go. I just hit continue, and it's freezing. We'll come back probably in about 20 to 22 hours and see how it's going. After 22 hours and 43 minutes, the process is complete. I'll go ahead and vent the valve, and we'll take a look at these peaches. These peaches are beautiful. That's one of the nice things about freeze drying, is it retains the appearance and the color, and most importantly, the taste of the peaches, I think better than just about any other preservation method you could choose. Now, I like eating these fresh, well, preserved fresh, like a snack. They're crunchy, they're full of peach flavor, and I just put these into jars and eat them whenever I get in the mood for a nice healthy snack. So good. Now, when it comes to the freeze-dried fruit, you have a lot of options. I have these packages of peaches and cream instant oatmeal, and by themselves they're okay. There really isn't much in the way of peach pieces, but that's easily remedied by taking some of these peaches and adding them either to your instant oatmeal or to regular oatmeal. The hot water that you use in making your oatmeal is perfect for reconstituting these pieces of peaches, and it'll be almost like putting a fresh piece of peach in your oatmeal. I also like to have granola for breakfast. It's the same idea, putting these freeze-dried peaches into my granola with a little bit of almond milk helps reconstitute these peaches and really makes for a nice, delicious breakfast. When it comes to storing these freeze-dried peaches, you can leave them in the shape that you cut them in, slices in this case, or you can break them into individual pieces. And this is what I'll often do because I like to eat these pieces as snacks. While these peaches can be stored for many months on the shelf, they'll only last as long as you're willing to keep them on the shelf and not enjoy the delicious flavor. You may have already figured out that while this is a great way to preserve peaches, you can also do the same thing with whatever fruits you might have. I've already done this with plums. I did some plum juice, made some plum jelly, made some plum leathers, and made some plum snacks. But if you want a more traditional way of doing your peaches, check out this video on how to can peaches. And if you want to know more about steam juicing, check out this video. I'm Gardener Scott. Enjoy gardening and preserving.